My name is Isabella Johnston, the Intern Whisperer. Our show is brought to you by Employers for Change, and today's tip of the week is continuing our series on unconscious bias, and we're going to talk about nonverbal bias. This is defined as analyzing communication that's displayed through body language and letting it affect a decision or an opinion to hire a person. So just imagine this. You are meeting a candidate, whether it is in person or virtually, for an interview, and nonverbal bias can creep in, whether it's a weak handshake, folded arms, or difficulty holding eye contact. So it's easy to take these cues as disinterested, overconfidence, or perhaps an overall negative attitude. It's important to remember that the way a person moves through the world is not indicative of their true intentions or whether they will be a successful addition to your team or not. So how can you avoid any type of this nonverbal bias? Well, first, remember, everybody's different. This includes the mannerisms and the ways that we communicate physically. For example, if a candidate is keeping their arms crossed in an interview, perhaps it's simply a nervous response. You can teach someone to uncross their arms, but that doesn't mean they will necessarily bring the skills to their position. So you just need to remember that, all people get anxious. We get nervous, and how we show that is very different. We just have to make sure that we're not internalizing it and trying to read something into it. Welcome to the Intern Whisperer. Our show is all about the future of work. So I want to welcome everyone to the Intern Whisperer. Our show is all about the future of work and innovation. And today's guest is somebody I've known for a while. His name is Luis Garcia. He is with Pete Learning. He is joining us for the show today. He is a seasoned international executive who has been working in technology, digital media, and education for over 25 years. He and I are peers. He specializes in driving new ventures and products to rapid growth by building effective teams that use innovation, technology, and creativity to achieve complex problems. He is an expert networker. He is a connector of people to opportunities and a lifelong learner. So I want to say, Luis, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Isabella. I'm super happy to be here with you.
Oh, and look at us. We're mirroring the black on black here. Look,
That's right.
That looks so good. I should turn off some of my lights to make my lighting match yours, but too late. Okay, so we kick off the show with 5 words that would drive you. Now, I only let you break my rule. No, nobody else gets to break the rule, but I've known you for a while. So what are your 2 words and why?
So the 2 words, and thank you for allowing me to break the rule, is driven and caring.
Okay, but why?
The driven came. We used to do this kind of exercises when I worked at Full Sail in university, and quite a bit in about the word describing things. And one time I took it up to myself to ask people to describe me with 1 word, and talk to a few people that I thought would represent me well. And this word driven came on top when people described me. So even if I didn't think that was a thing, I thought that it was true because people believed it. So I think it speaks to my competitive spirit, and I'm very goal driven. So every time I want to, I'm into something, I make goals so I can make a plan to reach it, and then make plans to also make sure that I stay away from the obstacles or remove obstacles. So it's just that impetus of always making progress that gave me that descriptive word of driven, and I added caring because it's been a journey of mine to add to what I do of helping others, and so I guess it's nice that I would like to describe myself that way, but I really do try to care and help others. So that's why the 2 words. And
Well,
you can care for others with a lot of drive.
you sure can. And because I added some too, you actually have 5, because I had said you're an expert networker, and you are. You just glide through the room when we go to events, and you're there connecting people to all types of opportunities. You've done that for me many times. I always appreciate it. So that's why I said connector, networker, and then a lifelong learner. It's like a compound word. I'm going to hyphenate it so it's there, because you've been in education for a really long time, and you're still staying in that space and making sure people are learning.
Yes, and I got to education by accident as a worker of education by accident, and but I stayed because I liked it, and so yes, it becomes something very important for me. Uh, but if we could go to the next question, I actually can tell the whole story of how.
Ooh, well, we are there. So where did you go to college? And
Yes.
then how did you get to where you are now? So that's a few years. So, we've got time, but sometime, not a whole day.
Yeah. Well, I will start even before me that
Okay.
education was incredibly important to my parents. And my dad was the first one to go to college from his family, and so was my mom. And I grew up in Venezuela. My parents are from a small town in the mountains in the Andes, the Venezuelan Andes, which a lot of people don't know that there's a little portion of the Andes that go into Venezuela, and so that's where my parents are from. And my dad left his home, I think at 15, because his town didn't have the last year of high school, so he had to move to a bigger city, and attended a big state university, and something that probably like it would be like Gainesville or UF, right? A city that is all about the university is all spread out around the city. So my dad went to a very big school like that, and he was from the first class of electrical engineering of that university. And as a result, my dad had a job in the capital of the country, and married my mom, and which stopped going to school, because back then a lot of people did that. I don't think got married to stay home, and she started having children, and years later she decided to improve herself. She finished high school in her 20s, and then went on to law school. And so I remember my mom studying to be an attorney, and which she still is. So my parents' education really changed their life, afforded them a really exceptional life, and that afforded us, their children, things that they could never have. And we used to travel a lot. We traveled all around the world. But everywhere we went, if there was a famous university, we would go to it. So if we went to San Francisco, we got to see Stanford. If we were in LA, we got to see UCLA. If we were in New York, we would see, NYU. And that's a practice that I carry myself. When I went to Boston the first time, I went without my parents, and I made sure that I visited a lot of the universities there. And so it was something very important in my family. And so I went to college in Venezuela first. I wanted to be a musician, and my parents weren't very down with the idea.
What do you play?
I play guitar and keyboards, and so I wanted to be a music producer. My parents they say, well, you gotta go to college first here, and then we'll see. Kind of hoping that it will go away. Music doesn't go away, and but I did, and I went into the Venezuelan version of computer science, which is called systems engineering. And because I was a programmer since I was 7 years old, so that was very familiar to me.
Wow.
And my older brother was in that program. So I went to a private university called Universidad Metropolitana in Caracas to attend a systems engineering school. And throughout, I still would play. I would play professionally through college, and 3 years in, and college there is 5 years. And I came to the States by myself with my twin brother. I have an identical twin brother.
Oh my God. Where does this person live?
Miami.
Oh my God. Okay. Now
So
if I see you, I want to see it together.
Yeah. I'll show you a picture. And he was smarter than me, and but I'm better looking.
You're twins.
That's right. You get that young. Most people don't get that young. And,
You're identical, so of course.
So anyway, I came to the States, and I went to visit Berkeley College of Music in Boston. I was all set up that I was gonna, after finishing college, I was gonna go to Berkeley, and I came back to Venezuela and told my parents, that's what they did. They promised that they would let me do that, and I still had 2 years to go. I graduated, and with that degree, I was very young. I graduated at 21.
Wow.
And so, and then came to the States, but came for a vacation with my parents first, and we were going to New Hampshire. And then we're going to finish the trip in Orlando, because all Venezuelan trips end in Orlando.
That's true.
And so while we were in New Hampshire, we went to Boston, and we went to see the university, and sat with admissions, and I could tell my parents were not happy about it. But then on my way down in Orlando, I had a friend that played with me that was attending Full Sail University, and which back then was called this Full Sail Real World Education. And he said, you cannot come see the school. So he picked us up, my brother and I, and he took us to the school. And it was just a pretty amazing place. And recording studios were much better than the ones that I saw in Boston and Berkeley. And the place itself was just more beautiful. And they had a 1-year program, because it wasn't a full bachelor's degree. But I already had a bachelor's degree, so I didn't care. And so my parents were more keen on us doing that. And so I came back to Venezuela, finished college, taught 1 semester in college programming while my brother was graduating, and then moved to Orlando to attend Full Sail. But there was another twist, and it was that while we were about to enroll, Full Sail started a new program, because we were going to go study recording, and that was called digital media, which was a combination of graphics and music and so on. And we thought that was probably better for us as programmers. And back then it was to do CD-ROMs, and probably have a better chances of staying in the country. And because that looked like a more corporate type job that we could get, and we could probably get sponsored. And whereas if we were to just in the recording career, those careers just start at the very bottom, and you don't get sponsorship to go serve coffee in a recording studio. And so we never actually went into the recording program. We went directly into this new program called digital media, and so I never became a music producer.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Towards the end of the program, part of the program included computer animation, and Full Sail invested in a Silicon Graphics lab, which is a very, very, very big investment back then. Each computer worth in 6 figures, right? And this is when Jurassic Park, Toy Story was coming out in the 90s. So it was a small component of it. It also had a component of virtual reality. I took a virtual reality class in 96 at Full Sail. And so it was very cutting edge, even though it was a 1-year program. And because of the training that the instructors needed to have to teach the 3D software, they used to get the training, the certification, and then they will go to LA and get hired by studios to do 3D, because it was very hard back then. And the school kept having to find another group of instructors, having to certify them, and they kept leaving. And so what the school decided to do, and this whole story will make sense in a second. They end up.
No, I think I can see where it's going, to be honest.
Yeah, they end up hiring the instructor that certified the animators. So at least get the instructor and not have to pay for every certification. And so that guy, his name was Albert Eng, and he gets hired by the school. And then we'll go into this very large conference in Vegas called the NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters. Full Sail would pay for about 20 students or 20 or 40 students to go for free. They will pay for it, and you have to go through a contest. And my brother and I applied, and we were chosen. So Full Sail will teach you all these ways to network. And all that I know about networking, I learned at school. So one day when in Las Vegas at this conference, and Albert, the guy that certified the animators, knocked at our door and said, "Can I use your phone? This is before cell phones." And I said, "Sure, come in and use the phone." And we are with every single business card we got that day, writing down the back what we learned from the person and who that person was, and we have like a log of everything, like a really, really, and the guy stands right next to us and says, "What are you doing?" And so we explained to them that we needed to get a job because we needed to get sponsors so we could stay in the country, and we wanted a job on the internet because we've been reading about the internet and that was the future, and we were teaching ourselves the programming languages of the internet. We were teaching ourselves that, and so that we could have an edge. And he's like, "I'm very impressed. Tomorrow you hang out with me." So next day, we get off the bus with him, and there's 30,000 people at NAB. It's a very large conference. We're walking in, and this guy with funny glasses is walking out, and says, "Albert," and he's like, "Andy," and they're hugging, and that guy had an animation studio in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who did a lot of work for ESPN. So, and Albert had certified his animators, so that's how they knew each other. So, and Albert asked, "How's the business?" And he said, "Well, we're doing this. We created this web thing, this internet thing. And now to help the production process with ESPN, we set up an internet connection and a website, and so that we could get the renders of the animations back and forth with the producers. And so we got into the internet business." And he said, "Oh, that's great. And how can I help you?" said Albert. So we need programmers. We don't have programmers. "Do you know any programmers, Albert?" And he said, "I sure do." And he turns around, and the two of us were there and said, "You guys have your resume?" And we, "Yeah, absolutely." And to make a story short, that was my first job.
You got sponsored?
Yeah.
Wow.
A few
How
months
did your
later,
parents feel with having two of their sons in an industry that they didn't understand?
they
or
did not
didn't want?
understand whatsoever. And
Yeah.
I think back, and it's kind of crazy what we did. And because it had to be so short, the interview, they fly us out to Milwaukee, and we walk into this office that looked really, really cool. And we sit with Andy, and Andy say, "I want to have sliders, XYZ slider on the browser to get a coordinate in 3 dimensions with a cube. And then I want to push a button, and I want that to enter into the alias system, re-render with the rotation of the cube, and put it back in the browser." And then he handed us the keys of the office. It was a 4th of July weekend. Keys of the office, he pointed to a bunch of manuals on the wall and left. And by Monday, we needed to make that happen. You couldn't have sliders in the browser in 1996. Wow. And the only way to do it was through a Java applet, which we had taught ourselves how to do, a programming language we had taught ourselves. So we could do that. And I could, in the server, through the prompt, generate a scene file and modify it. But I couldn't connect the whole thing. We couldn't connect the whole thing. And the day of the interview, the assistant administrator came in early and said, "What you guys doing?" So he said, "Well, we did the sliders here, and you can push this button and then call HTTP with the coordinates. And then I can, through the prompt here, I can actually put the same coordinates and regenerate the scene file. But what I cannot generate is a JPEG. And how do I put this in the browser back?" I said, well, you guys have to write a CGI program. I'll write it for you because you guys have all the components. So I'll write it for you. So he wrote it. And it was a few lines of code. He was impressed with the way we actually did it because he said, I would have not done it like that. I would have, he would have hacked it. And we actually did it in the formal way. So Andy walked in, it was a theater. So we put the browser in the theater, there's the cube, there's the three sliders. He moves the sliders, pushes a button, and we actually never saw it. It will hit the CGI will prompt into the render farm, regenerate the thing. He had a program that converted into JPEG, and then it showed up in the browser and we got hired.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing though. It's really a good story, to be honest. This is your twin brother, right?
My twin brother and we got hired together.
Yeah, I know. I can just see your parents. You know, I don't know your parents, but I can imagine the look on their face going, what did they just do? We don't understand. How did they do this? Are they going to be okay?
Yeah, I came back from that trip and proposed to my wife, who is my wife right now, because I got a job in the US now. I can get married, and then moved to Milwaukee.
That's a big change. Well, I don't know. I'm sure it gets. Is there snow in Venezuela? I'm sure there is.
No.
There's no. Okay, so you had a huge culture shock of weather.
Huge.
Yeah, and Milwaukee. Come on, I don't know. At the time, I
Out
don't
of
think it
all
was very
places.
progressive.
Yeah, it is very, very, very interesting. We spent a couple of years there. A year later, we were running the whole development team, my brother and I. I became an executive really young, like 25. And we became VPs of operations for that company like a year a year and a half in. And then we're getting to the late 90s, right? And now it's like .com boom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one day again for work, and they got a message in my machine. You know, again, this is before cell phones, and there's this full-site graduate that went to school with me had left a message in my machine, which I haven't heard from since I graduated, but somehow I got a hold of my phone number at home, and said, guys, you guys remember me? We went to school together. I was starting a startup in Phoenix. And it's called Quepaso.com. It's going to be bilingual, but no one here speaks Spanish. And I remember you guys, and so that's how I got my second job.
So I have a ton of questions there. Do you still program though?
Every once in a while, I love programming, and during the pandemic, I taught myself Python because I didn't know any Python. So I do a lot of modeling in Excel, and I was doing some very complex models, and I knew if I could actually write code, I could do it better. So I taught myself Python, and just to do that. So that was like I spent quite a few hours, probably like 100 hours during the pandemic teaching myself doing that, and yes, all the models, the forecast models, and the for student population of Full Sail, which when you work in education. Modeling student population is really, really hard, and we're done with that. So yes.
So how did you end up back at Full Sail? Because that was like what, 19, 20 years.
We went to Phoenix. We get hired again together, my brother and I. This time now he's getting married, and we moved to Phoenix. This company, the day I arrived to Phoenix, the company filed to go public, and so it was a roller coaster. And we got hired as VPs of product development. So I had it's the first time I was going to do content. So I had to hire a team of journalists, which I had no idea how to do. But we ended up doing it. And the company went public a couple months later, and drive that, and then there was not really revenue. And so we had to lay off people, and the whole thing that a company were going in 20 years we didn't do.
That's sad.
Yeah, and then I got so I lost that job. I got laid off of that job eventually. I had to lay off my team all the way to laying myself off, and then a media company from Venezuela was moving to Miami, opening an office in Miami, and we wanted to go back to Florida so bad. And I interviewed with big companies in California as well, but I didn't want to go there. And then we got hired for the third time together,
Mm-hmm.
and we moved to Miami. And I worked they opened two offices, one to do the product development of the web properties, which my brother ended up managing, and one little corporate venture group to invest in companies. And that's how I got my first investment job, the only one actually, in Miami. So
I'm still going. How'd you get to Full Sail?
how do I get to Full Sail? Well, I connected back to education. So I worked in ventures. I'm like, I don't even know how the people that work on this look like. And that's what I start seeing that they had MBAs.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like maybe I should get one. And so I started applying to executive programs back then. And I said, I'm going to try to go to Duke because I really like that school. And I have friends that have gone there. And I don't know if I get accepted. I don't think I'm good enough. If I don't, I'll stay and go to the local to University of Miami or whatever. And so I get accepted, and then I get laid off because the political situation in Venezuela went down spiral, and then they decided to close the office in Miami. And that's how I got the Full Sail. And I called the university. They have tried to hire me 2 years before to do their online education. I end up going to the job in Miami. So I called them back and said, well, we never hired somebody. So why don't you come with us? And so I moved to Orlando on a Friday to this house, cleaned the house during the weekend. And on Sunday, I took an airplane to North Carolina for my first week at Duke. And then I came back on the following weekend. And then my first day at Full Sail was right after that. And that's how I got to education, completely by accident.
Wow.
It's the job that I got.
Yeah. And you've had a lot of different roles there. I think this is obviously the longest conversation I've had, and I've learned so much about you. I'm really glad that you've agreed to be a guest.
I don't tell the stories very often, and I hope it's not boring. But
no, it's so interesting. Yeah.
Well, Full Sail hired me because they needed to do an online university, and they didn't know how. And I had a background in web, so they thought doing online education was creating a website. I knew how to do that, and that's why I get hired. But that was the easy part.
Yeah.
That was the easy part. It took me like 2 years of experiments to understand what online learning was, even, and how that translated into educational model of Full Sail, which I didn't even know what an educational model was. And so a lot of my peers were people that were my teachers 7-8 years before, that have gotten into the administration. So in a way, I got into a very familiar place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got hired in 2003. By 2005, I was rolling out prototypes of online courses, and decided to build our own learning management system because I didn't like anything that was out there. So I designed it myself, and roll out the first degree in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me 4 years, and then it was a roller coaster after that. No, so, it was just up.
Yeah. Well, roller coasters can go pretty high too.
Yeah, it was just,
and then they start going all over the place.
The first class was 13 students. It was a graduate school in the entertainment business. I had to create a department to create content, a department to give support.
So did they have instructional designers back then?
We didn't even know that existed. And that was a thing. So I built the first courses with a small team of, video people. And one of which is Michael Carwell was my first hire, which has a great company, Digital Brew now, here in Orlando, super successful. And then in a year, we have a couple hundred students. And then 2 years in, we had 5,000 students. And the reason why that's not noticeable is because the campus population was 5,000.
Mm.
And it took 20 years to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that online in 2.5.
That's crazy.
And then before I know it, I had 1,000 employees.
That's
and I
crazy
rolled out
too.
over 25 educational programs. And we were the fastest growing online university in the country.
You were probably the only one that was online, I think, at
No,
that time.
they were plenty. I mean, there were huge operations like, University of Phoenix was huge, and there were other ones, but traditional universities haven't gone into online just yet.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was very, very. There was a point that was hiring 50 people a month.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was. So it was from me just by myself to like 2-3 people to one person departments turning into 20 people departments, and we had to move offices every 6 months because we kept.
I know, because Full Sail's so big. It used to be this gigantic shopping center that was out there, and it's turned into this whole education compound, and it just continues to get bigger.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I did that for 7 years. And then I thought that it was time for me to, because I see my career in chunks of 5 years, and I did that for 7 in that, and I said, it doesn't need me anymore. And so I just gave up all my operations. I just want to do other things. I just like starting things, and they were very, very kind with me and letting me do that. So I transitioned all my operations out, and because I think that's part of success is when it doesn't need you to run. That in my mind.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And so if he's ready to be transitioned to somebody else, I'm opening a door to somebody else to lead. And I did my job. If it falls apart because I'm not there, then I feel that I did a bad job.
Mm.
So I transitioned out and started doing other things. Like I started the recruitment department for international, which we didn't have one. And I grew that in a couple of years. Then I spent a year in Brazil because a company that had bought over there. And so I went to be CEO there for a year. And
For Full Sail?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I came back and did a brand for children. That was a ton of fun. And called Full Sail Labs for summer camps, and the children was really, really, really cool. And then my last job was emerging technologies. The university wanted to move from media into technology, and they took technology careers. And that was a transition that they've been trying to do for a while, but wasn't quite getting there. And so they created a position for me to hold all the technology degrees as a portfolio and growing them. And I doubled that in 3 years. And
I have questions for you offline, ma'am. Just not on the show, but offline.
Yeah, thank you. And that's it. My education was University in Venezuela undergrad, another undergrad in a Full Sail, and Duke University for my master's degree. And that's how I got to education, by accident.
Is your Duke degree, what is it?
MBA.
Okay, so did you do that all online?
No, I will, in my first 2 years at Full Sail, every other Thursday, I would get on an airplane, and Thursday afternoon, fly to Raleigh, North Carolina. I had classes.
So it was online. I mean, on the ground.
It was presential, yeah. So all day on Friday and 3/4 of the day on Saturday, and then we'll fly back.
Yeah. Rollins does those. I know a lot of schools do that where it's very intensive, and it's just.
Yeah, it was intensive.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. It was amazing.
By the time you've been working for a while, though, all of that, it's accelerated learning truly, because you understand how it should work. It's no longer, gee, I don't know, is this possible? It's like, oh yeah, we know it's possible.
And executive programs, especially, the caliber of everybody else around you is just incredible.
Yeah,
so you learn from your peers. I think that those 2 years, I will every Friday or Saturday, I will, we were having a drink because we were off class or something, and I will put forward a problem and that I was having at work. Because the first job that they gave me a Full Sail was to run our university press. which I knew nothing. I came from the digital world. I didn't know how to print. And so it was kind of a manufacturing thing as well. So I didn't know, never been on a factory plant. And I had people that in my class that were, plant managers for, Johnson & Johnson or whatever, Procter & Gamble. So I would ask him, I'm having this problem. And they would say, oh, that's very typical. This is how you fix it. And I would come back on Monday, implement what my peers told me. And I'm like, I never felt so smart.
Mm-hmm. That's really a good
So
story.
did I take too long to answer that question?
No, you did great. I don't know. Do you want to give a little update as to where you are now? Because we haven't gone through the other questions and we have a bunch of stuff to talk about.
So all in all, I spent 19 years at Full Sail University and left a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And really looking into doing more entrepreneurial things. I started businesses inside Full Sail, and some of them were very successful, some of them mildly successful, and some of them were not successful at all. And mm-hmm. But I always wanted to be able to own part of what I do, and so I wanted to leave and to do that, and they were very kind to me, and left in very good terms. And I did a lot of networking to understand, what was going to be my next stage in life, and through that networking, somebody introduced me to this concept of being a fractional executive. And so that you can work with different companies, helping them grow, and also as part of the have compensation in both stock and cash. And so I thought, oh, this is great for me, at least until I find a place where I want to go full time. So I started doing that. I got clients immediately, and there's been working with startups ever since. But now, like 4 months ago, Jacques, which you have had in your show as well, just exited Stacks. And we have been, acquaintances for a long time through the local ecosystem. And we have launched several times. And he has a lot of interest in education and training. So he will ask me questions. And so he approached me about his new startup, which was called Senselia at the time. I just thought that he wanted another, it was going to be another client for me. Mm-hmm. And so I gave him a proposal. And then he came back with, no, but I need is a president. And which I was not expecting at all. Mm-hmm. So I started working with him and Senselia about 4 months ago. And we rebranded that to Pete.
I like that so much better.
Yeah, Senselia is hard for people to tell and to spell and to pronounce, and so it's difficult when your brand is not helping you. So Pete stands for personalized education, training, and enrichment, and it's easy to pronounce, it's easy to spell, and people get it. So we about a month ago we rebranded to that.
Mm. Well, that was a super good story. So we're going to have to blow through these next few questions relatively quickly. A favorite quote that you live by?
Yes.
What is it?
There's a lot of quotes that I live by, but one that I really like when I'm working with people, and because I'm a very data-oriented person, and working with people, there's always opinions and emotions, and those are great. We should always listen to those. But to make decisions, if there's hard data, it's always good to at least look at it. And so I read this quote years ago that said, "If we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have is opinions, let's go with mine." And so I did a scientific study for retention at Full Sail that took me about 3 years, and I always start my presentation with that quote, so that people will let go of their biases of what they thought about the issue was, and allow themselves to look at the data and what the data was saying about the issue at hand. So I started using it all the time. So when I'm working with anyone and we're trying to make a decision, I remind them, do we have any data? If we have data, let's look at that. And if we don't have that, then all we have is opinions. And I have mine too. And if I'm the one in charge, we're going to go with mine. So, so I kind of live by that one.
I looked this up and it was Jim Barksdale. I went, wow, I like that quote. I'm going to be
Yes.
using that quote too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. That's golden. Okay, so what is the hardest lesson you learned that changed your life?
I don't know if that classify as hardest.
It can be a
But
hard
definitely,
lesson.
but a hard lesson. And I come from a very touchy culture. My country people really say hi by hugging. Like there's
Mhm.
not a lot of shake hands down there, even if it's male, female, or whatever it is. There's always hugging, and so I always thought that people like to hug, and so even when some people are more like they get very tense when you hug them, and I never cared. I just hug them anyway. And a few years ago, an employee told me that she didn't like to be hugged, and the thing is, like I just don't believe it, and at the time I didn't believe it, and so I continued doing it, it, and then her spouse came to me and said, she doesn't like to be hugged, and it wasn't something that I was, uh, you know,
It wasn't inappropriate, is
it
what
wasn't inappropriate,
yeah.
but I wasn't getting it.
You
And,
weren't like really believing it.
right, I wasn't really believing it, and when the spouse told me that, I'm like, okay, there really is such a thing, and some people don't like to be hugged, and so it was a very big learning for me. So now I ask.
Yeah, asking is a good thing.
Yeah.
What are you most grateful for?
The thing that you're gonna hear with me is that I'm always grateful for family and friends, and relationships is what's most important to me, and so I'm grateful for all the relationships that I have in my life. And start with my parents, my siblings, my wife, my kids, and my friends.
Those are good things to have because those are the things that truly matter in life, right? That and health. And what would you want to be remembered for?
So hopefully, as a good parent, a husband, and friend.
Oh, yeah. Well, I believe that to be true. So we're going to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor, Cat5 Studios, and we will be right back.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat5 Studios.
So now we're back to the second half of our show. This is where we look at what is the future of 2030 going to be like? Not that far away. So think about it as it relates to jobs and to industries and how you think that might look. So 2030, what does your world of 2030 look like? It's all opinions.
I'm usually really good at this because I feel like 5-year windows are easy to see, and but I'm having a hard time with this one just because artificial intelligence has been so disruptive. And what I will say then is that there will be very few places in which artificial intelligence doesn't play a role.
I agree with you. Yeah.
How that actually looks like, I don't know. I don't know yet. But there isn't a day that I don't use artificial intelligence. It has been a while, actually, even before generative AI, artificial intelligence have been in everybody's life without people noticing for about 50 years. But now normal people using it is a very big change.
I liken this as to something that people, it's been progressive throughout our lives, right? At first, when man was on the earth, we would write on caves. And then from caves, I'm going to take big industrial age jumps here. We go from caves to a place where, people are writing in books, hand. And then we go to printing presses. And then we move from there to creating the web. And then we go from the web to where we are, the internet and, Web3 and AR, VR. But now we have chat or AI technology, right? And so people, when we first had the internet, they were going, oh my God, if it's on the internet, it must be true. But they aren't believing, they don't recognize there's good things out there and there's bad things. And now that we have chat, they think, oh my God, what is that? And I said, if you just think about how technology has progressed, it is the next step. AI gathers all knowledge like this. I'm holding my arms out big for the listeners.
all knowledge. Spread your arms out. And it gathers it all in so that we can have all of this information at our fingertips in seconds, literally, right? In seconds and minutes. And so we have to, filter through that and see, well, what's real and what's not, and we have to look at the data, because we know that people can put fake videos up there. We know that people can put fake news out there. There's all of this stuff, but that's where AI pulls all of this. When you ask for something, you get good and the bad.
Everything. It's putting our best and our worst.
It is. So I believe one of the jobs going into the future should be now, is a fact checker that's actually verifying what is real that's being given to me in these seconds.
I think they're definitely going to be tools to help with fact checking. I've seen experiments where they're putting an AI in front of the other. So we have an AI fact checking the other AI.
Mm-hmm.
But you also remember that we got skeptical, and then we learned how to search better. We make sure that I think that users will also get better at checking their own work.
Mm-hmm.
And but yes, absolutely. I think that most likely we have to have roles that help
verify
and curate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. What is that quote that journalists use? It's verify and then check.
Trust but verify.
Yeah.
I think Ronald Reagan said that.
Yeah, I would believe that too.
Yeah.
So if we have all of this technology and it's AI and it's just moving at a pace that no human can move, what other type of positions would you see? Because I feel like it can eliminate some jobs. So the jobs that would be coming into place also would be things that are truly demonstrating the value of a human, that is not only just checking and verifying if everything is correct, but putting that spin on it that makes it sound human. I had read this article last week that 3 students out of 20 had submitted a paper, and they were accused no longer of plagiarism, but of using chat, because it was the same, they put in the same topic, and these 3 students had the very same paper. So there's no customization.
Even if you use the same prompt, it should not return the same answer, and or not verbatim. And but I think it's going to become really hard to curate an answer like that. So I think the evaluation has to change. Mm-hmm. And I often talk about this. I'm old enough to remember when teachers didn't want calculators in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then didn't want scientific calculators in the classroom, because you can push a button and evaluate a whole formula. And then I remember when teachers didn't want a laptop in the classroom, because they didn't want students to be fact checking the teacher or going ahead or getting distracted. So this is just a new one that teachers are gonna have to work with.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only teachers, but the job of a person that's in education has to be very progressive now. You have to be on top of what are the technologies out there, and what are we doing to make sure that the rigor is really in the education now, and it's not
I think that the rigor has to be in the critical thinking now, and which is very hard to evaluate. And the reason why we teach tests is because it's really hard to evaluate at scale. And it's so easy to mark an answer somewhere and a machine can evaluate it, instead of having to have a conversation with every single student and understanding how much they know. But that's the world in which we're going to have to move into. And AI actually can assist in that process as well. But we just got to change it. It's been about over 20 years where the teacher no longer is the owner of the information. When you and I were growing up, the information was coming from that person standing in front of you, and it was one direction all the way to verify it or knowing it was true. That actually disappeared about 25 years ago with the internet. Now whatever that person said, I can go verify and get a lot more knowledge than that person even had. So the teacher became more of a facilitator, a mentor, a curator. And so the job of the instructor have been changing over time. And this is just a big one now. And but I do believe that those that really care about learning will find a way to incorporate these new tools into the teaching and into the process of evaluation and assessment, so that at the end we evaluate learning and nothing else.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we need to wrap our arms around. I had mentioned to you before, we're not going to go into the dark space, though, just to be clear. But there is, and I always like our listeners to be informed, is to, there's a gentleman, he's called the godfather of AI. His name is Geoffrey Hinton, Geoffrey, as Jeffrey. And he had invented it back in the 50s. And that's really where the internet, everything came back at, these top tier schools in Boston, where it was Harvard and MIT and all of these geniuses that were going, here, what if we do this, and here we are, 50, 60 years later, we're in the world that they created. And they're still doing this kind of stuff, all of these people in the world that are super brilliant, creating futures like, we could look at Elon Musk. Are you going to be going to Mars or the moon or anything on his test?
No, I'm too old now.
Yeah, well, I don't know. People go. You're not too old. You can go.
Yeah, I would love to get in a rocket.
Yeah. Just as long as you get to come back.
That's right, but Mars is probably too far.
Yeah.
Probably too far.
It's
I will
amazing.
have to be gone for years. I know, but I'll go to the moon.
So what do you think about ethical dilemmas with AI? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think any disruptive technology brings things that were unexpected and show their dilemmas later sometimes. I think AI, we can actually see the dilemmas up front. And I think with the internet, we didn't see the dilemmas up front. And with other iterations of like social media, we didn't see the dilemmas up front. It was a long time before we thought we started seeing the bad consequences. There are a lot of good things about social media, but there are also bad things. And coming into it, we didn't even think there was any bad thing for it. And so with AI is we can already tell that they are seeing very big challenges ahead of us. And so I take the optimistic side of this. I don't think that AI is going to take over the world, destroy humanity. I just think that it's going to be a great propulsion to advancement and innovation. But that doesn't take away from the dilemmas. I think cloning in-person people, cloning voices presents an ethical dilemma. Because in the world, when we do that really, really well, we won't know anymore who to believe. Even if something is untrue, even if something is true, then the person that is being attacked in that whatever doctor video be able to say, well, I never did that. That's doctor. And that was AI generated. So it will be difficult to tell the truth from not the truth. So I do think there has to be a way by legislation and regulation to say you got to be able to identify something that's synthetically created. And so you be able to say, oh, that is actually a real person doing this or saying that, or person this is this. So that is one of the biggest one for me.
I like that idea.
Yeah. I also think that the biases are very real. So scientists that are training models have to be very aware of the biases. I was telling somebody that I'm generating images of a digital professional, and if I say give me an image of a project manager and working in an office and not really say any gender, it will come back as a white male.
Mm.
The first try will be a white male. And so I had to add to the prompt. I want it to be female. I want it to be olive skin, and so I can get a different profile person. So
Mhm.
that tells me that there's an overwhelming amount of training with Caucasian than otherwise. And
That's
I'm
true.
not saying that this is true. It has been found before. So that's another ethical dilemma we ought to have. So if it is for images, it gotta be for something else. It will be for opinions. It will be for truth, for facts. Even the way you laid out facts could have with biases. So the training comes with the good and with the bad. So there are dilemmas everywhere.
Mhm.
And but I am hopeful that we're gonna be able to. The net result will be positive and for society.
Mhm. You mentioned something that's very insightful too, because Netflix has this special called Conscious Bias, or Unconscious Bias. I think it's unconscious bias. And it was all of the people that were up in these universities in Boston and New York that created the facial recognition, and it can clearly identify anybody that's white, but it was just lumping everybody together that was a person of color. You know, whether you were male or female, it just put you all together. So then people were being wrongly accused and arrested for things that they hadn't done, because if you walk outside your door and you go into any building and even on the streets, you see cameras. If you count them in like 2 blocks, you will be amazed at how many cameras are there and capturing us all the time. But people I don't think they're aware of what's going on around them. We're always on camera. Our phones are always listening.
Yes, well, I have very little technology in my house, like
Mm.
this, and because of that very reason, I don't see a reason why my phone should talk to my washer and dryer.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
see
your
that
washer
more
and dryer, your refrigerator, your coffee maker, none of them have any AI built into it. It's just
or
like
Wi-Fi.
an
But
old coffee pot.
for me, that's actually a security hole if I turn off the Wi-Fi for those devices.
Well, what
Because
about your TV behind you though?
I don't put the Wi-Fi in the TV either.
Ah,
Yeah, I don't because I have to believe I use a smart TV through Apple TV, but
yeah.
I trust Apple.
Mm.
I don't trust the manufacturer of my TV for cybersecurity is what I mean.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, I'm very careful about all devices have a way to communicate, and I say I just don't want to. I mean, I just gonna choose the devices that I want to connect to.
Do you
And
read the terms and conditions of all of these things? I think most Americans do not.
nobody does. I think AI can help with that.
Mm.
And
I have read them on some of my things. So Apple, the iPods that you put in your ears, it says this can cause cancer by putting it this close to your head. And then it has some case studies, and I went, "Oh, okay, I'm not buying those." So I always make sure that my I have, wired ones plugged in, or I put them on, on speaker, because I'm just no, I don't want to. Yeah, it's one less thing. So I'm with you in that place, and maybe I'm a little bit further in that same area, because I was going, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. Anyway, okay, so we've got to be wrapping up our show here, Luis. How best mentoring advice that you would like to pass on?
I think that we all have to listen to those that have unconditional love for us.
Hmm.
So
Why?
when I need advice, I first go to my family.
Because you trust them and believe them, right?
They have unconditional love for me, and I have unconditional love for them.
And they're going to tell you the truth.
Yeah. So I think we ought to listen to those. We ought to listen carefully to those that have unconditional love for us.
I like that one. So how can our listeners connect with you?
So I'm mostly in LinkedIn, and you can find me at Luis E. Garcia. And I usually, if you want to write me, I'll answer back. You can follow me in there. That's the easiest way to connect with me.
Very nice. We did share the Pete Learning website and the Pete Learning LinkedIn. And just so our listeners have even deeper appreciation for what you said, why only one social channel for Pete Learning?
Yes, I made that decision, and a couple of things. Number one, I like to do things well,
Mhm.
and managing social channels takes a lot of work, a lot of resources, and as a startup, we don't have a lot of resources, so we have to pick and choose. So because we are, so that's the first reason why to limit the social channels. Now, why only one? Is because we are a B2B company. We're selling, so if we're gonna put effort into a social channel, we want it to be a place where our customers or potential customers will be, and that's by and far in LinkedIn. And the second reason is because at this point, right now, the ecosystem of social media is very uncertain, and I don't think that we can drive value from anywhere else right now.
Yeah, you gave me, when we had this conversation offline, you gave me a thought, and I went, I'm going to pause on this one too, because, how much of it, I know I have a 3-sided market, so I feel like I have to be there in some of the social channels to hit the generations that I'm, was seeking in mine. I'm B2B, but, that's the paying customer, but inventory is B2C.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the 2-sided market.
Yeah. Well, it's schools, students, and employers. So it's 3-sided. But anyway, thank you so much. Your insight and wisdom, I cherish it. And I truly mean that, because I love this story that I got to be a part of. And I'm confident our listeners will. So this show airs, just so and you can tell people to start looking for it, is December 5th.
Oh, just love me for 2023.
Yeah.
Really? Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So, we are there, and you're going to be part of that group of people that's going to be driving a lot more traffic to obviously your show, but also to the Intern Whisper podcast. So
Awesome.
I am so excited to have had you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoy every minute that I spend with you. So I'm very happy to spend this time with you. And hopefully I was able to give something of help.
Oh, you've been immensely helpful. I appreciate it. Well, you have a great evening, and I look forward to catching up with you again another time.
Happy Halloween. Take care.
We want to thank our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, and thank you to our video team, Gabe Laporte, Tommy Myers, Andrew Pigot, and Julissa Hurtado. Music is by Charles Lawrence Lead, and you can visit Employers for Change at www.e4c.tech to learn how you can create real diversity and inclusive culture while scaling your people for the future work. Thank you for supporting the Intern Whisperer by subscribing to us on Podbean, our Employers for Change YouTube channel, or streaming from your favorite podcast channel.